And welcome back to Flow's Sports Fix on this Wednesday evening. It's time for a very important discussion now, folks. So I have got the Flowman and the Statman. Don't laugh, it is a very serious conversation we're going to have. It's dealing with concussion. And the AFL is putting out there that maybe these rules are going to extend beyond the AFL right down to local clubs. So, Flowman, you've been starting to get yourself across this. So what is the case? Is this the AFL's concussion rule now affects all football, or that is the end game?
This is where it is a really important announcement that's been made, and this has been documented this week, that anybody in a state league or a local football player would be barred from returning to play for at least 12 days. The current concussion protocol, people may say. But I've got some concern here about local football clubs where you've got your local trainer. They do some basic level 1 type concussion training. Yep. When there's a serious incident on a country football oval, there is usually a call for the ambulance, and a paramedic will then attend if there is a complete knockout or a neck injury and so forth and so on. So we have a lot of protocols around this, and that is saying that we've got the right people at the right location, and I think our country teams are doing really well in this area. But there's another angle here, and that is that where we've got community sport where we may not have a person who's a trainer who's present at that particular first aid trained person at the game. Like we're talking soccer games, we're talking cricket, we're talking girls playing netball that may fall and hit their head on the court and so forth. So these concussion protocols are going to be a greater impost than on local community football, netball, sport in general, and in country areas where you're a long way away from an ambulance. Are we making a decision at AFL level that could have enormous implications on the playing of community sport in the future if the concussion protocol is fully put in place, which is effectively what's being said here?
Another thing to think about is that the AFL clubs have their team doctors, and they're with the team all the time. And bringing you in, Jace, does that mean that local clubs on all levels are going to have their team doctor?
Well, that's an interesting point. First of all, this isn't a might be. This is in. This is done. As of now, this is the ruling that the AFL has come up with, from what I understand. So it's not a case of get used to it or be prepared for it. It's happening. So a couple of things. Just did a little bit of research on how trainers are trained, and what actually comes with a level 1 trainers course. So there is a module in there about concussion, but in the limited research that I've been able to do on this, I'm not entirely sure what they learn about concussion in that. So I don't know if trainers have the right to rule someone out for concussion. For the argument, for the sake of this argument, I'm going to say they do. If you do a training module on concussion, I imagine that means you would have the appropriate training to be able to determine if someone is concussed. Now, if that's the case, on game day, I don't have a problem with the ruling, with the idea, because what we're going to stop by doing this, if a trainer says that player is concussed, that's the end of the argument. That player cannot go back out on the ground. Now, in the past, we've seen, at country football level, we've seen heroes made, tall tales told about guys who were, completely knocked out just before halftime, coming back on the ground and winning games of football for their clubs. They're great wives' tales, but that's where we want them consigned to, history, because we know now just how dangerous concussion actually is. So regardless, whether it's country or at AFL level, the last thing we want is to see someone seriously concussed back on the field. And I don't think any of us want to see that at any level anymore now, knowing what we know about concussion, right?
Correct.
The problem I have with it is the ongoing side of this. And I don't think this is where the AFL has taken into account the issues in country communities. My understanding of the ruling is that to then be cleared to come back to play after the 12 days, you have to consult your doctor. Now, I would like to think that if you're concussed in a game of sport at any level, that then you would go and see your doctor anyway. But let's be honest, that's much easier said than done in some country communities. It's all right if you're in Mildura. It's all right if you're within half an hour of a major town. But we know that there are issues with country doctors at the moment. We know that you have to travel large distances to get to country doctors sometimes. So I hope there's some room to manoeuvre here, or at least there's an opportunity for trainers to get involved and actually clear a player from any concussion-type symptoms in country areas. Because if there's not, I mean, you could find a player, a situation having to drive hours to be cleared after their 12 days is up just to be able to take the field again. And I'm not sure that's what we want, guys.
Exactly right.
That's right, yeah. And I reckon that you add to that, to the fact that this basic testing, the doctors know what they're looking for, and those that are dealing with head injuries all the time. Yeah. But we're saying here that not only 12 days may not be enough. This is where we go with children, for instance, Jason, that kids that are playing sport, if they get a concussion, they may need a longer recovery period than 12 days. And again, it may be that the AFL announces that it is 12 days and everyone says, right, you can play after, not miss next week, but you'll play the following week. We'll see you training on the Thursday night because you would have actually, survived your 12 days. That's not what this is actually about. The doctors that then can give the approval then have to look at whether or not it is 12 days or longer than 12 days. And I think that we're going to see a more of an impost put on trainers at a local level, definitely to make the decision and to make the call on concussion. I think we could see some aggro when it's a football final. I mean, if the player says he's been knocked in the head, a trainer assesses him that he believes he's been concussed, and the person says, look, I'm fine to go on. I witnessed on the weekend watching country football, Jace, a player that got knocked in the head from a head front-on collision. He got straight back up and continued to play. There was no concussion protocol test conducted with that player. He looked okay at the time, but that's not what this is about, is it?
No, it's not. And sorry to jump in there, Clayton, and that's the Pandora's box that this issue opens up. I don't necessarily have a problem with the ruling on the day. Once a player has been ruled as concussed, they shouldn't go back on the field. I think we all accept that. What happens next is the concern I have in country football, because you're exactly right with what you said earlier, boys. The access to doctors at country level, it's not always there. There's certainly not doctors at the games, unless you're in a major metropolitan state league or a major regional league. Very rarely will the club have a doctor sitting on the bench. They'll have trainers. But are we then putting too much of an onus on trainers to be medically trained and give medical clearance to players? Does that then open up legal ramifications for clubs and trainers? Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just putting that out there. I think we need to have all of these things addressed before rulings like this are made. Yeah. Otherwise, we do open up that Pandora's box.
You're dead right, Jason. That's what I've been sort of reading, doing the little bit of research I've been doing it as well. And the insurance side of it, who covers that, who pays that, and what will it cost? And also, as you mentioned there, the legal side, the liability. Where does that fall? A trainer could, in their good faith, be doing the right thing, but the onus on the player to do something, and they might not pick something up that a trained doctor would. And if then that player comes back on and something the worst, you can imagine the worst possible scenario. Where does that liability fall, and how does that fall on that trainer? And I'm thinking that it's almost to the point now where the more I'm looking at it, every single team is going to have to, or every club for their team is going to have a doctor right there for every game. Yeah,
and this becomes the question, because AFL has appointed a couple of ladies, the Associate Professor Catherine Wilmont, Head of Concussion Innovation Research, and Rachel Elliott is a Head of Concussion Healthcare Governance. They're going to lead development, research, education, innovation and governance of this issue. So I would suggest that at a football level, now we're not talking cricket, netball, tennis or any other sport that may be played, that there's going to be a training module that would have to be put to every club through, that every league would have to go through, where they would have to work as to what is the protocol they must now implement. Now, leagues will tell me we've already got that way and we're already doing that, but the AFL's announced that we've just appointed these two people to do this. Yeah. So I suspect that maybe the clubs haven't got this information fully in place as to who does what they're allowed to do, when you call for a doctor to come or an ambulance to come, for a paramedic to assess the person. These become all very important questions, and I know that that this is going to be something that isn't going to go away from country sport, and it certainly isn't going to be something that's going to be treated lightly by anybody in country sport. I know everyone is concerned about this.
Jace, final word for you?
Yeah, look, I just think the timing of it is wrong. I don't necessarily have a problem with the rollout of this. Like I said, we don't want concussed players back on the field, and we don't want serious brain injuries for our, country football legends, our guys who play 400-500 games and have probably had numerous concussions in their careers, to just keep teams on the field. We don't want to see people getting hurt. What I have a problem is, at the moment with COVID, the situation, there's already a number of roadblocks to people getting involved in country sport, either at committee level or even on the field. Are we adding another one now at a bad time? And I just think we might be. I just think we might be adding another roadblock, another issue, something else that clubs need to overcome when we've already asked them to overcome so much over the last 12 months. I'm just not sure the timing's right. But I understand why they're doing what they're doing. And like I said, I understand the medical side of things, but just think there's probably more to this issue than just that.
There certainly is, and I'm sure you and the Flowman will be talking more about it in the weeks and the months ahead. All right, thank you there, Jace. We will leave it there. Thank you, Flowman, very much for that conversation. Folks, if you want to contribute, if there is something we've missed that you want to bring to our attention, get in touch with us via our Facebook page, Flow FM Australia, or you can send us an email, send it through to news@flowfm.com.au. And don't forget to look out for the podcasts and go to Flow News 24 for all the latest sporting information that we've got there as well. We've got more coming up on the Flow Sports Fix on this Wednesday night, not too far away. Hang around.